What a great Torah portion we have this morning. It is Tzav. The blessing is someplace, I think, but maybe not. Yes, it is. It's on the bottom of the second page, and Raj has it teed up. So for all of the dozens of folks who are in the room and all of you at home, share with me in the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam.
I share the Torah.
Bleeding goats. That's what it sounds like. I'm gonna mute all of you, as always, because I can. Just to remind you what this is about. So we are in the second portion of the book of Leviticus. This is all about the sacrificial system, and in fact, delineating the types of sacrifices. Remember, the beginning of the portion is Eish Tamid Tukadbo, a perpetual fire shall be kept burning on it, the altar, or maybe in him, the Kohen. What we know is that we get the description of all the different offerings here. This is sort of like the priest's user manual. The first time I became a rabbi and I was at some event and I had to bring my rabbi's manual, and some person in the congregation, I forget, joked, "Oh, can you fix sinks with that?" As if to say all the answers were in there. All the answers are not in there, but there are lots of questions. And so we get from the mincha offering to the grain offering, to the guilt, the asham offering, we finally get to zevach hashlamim and zevach hatodah. So we get to this unique offering. It's unique in many ways. And in fact, I would say that it's an offering unlike any other that still can speak to us today, maybe beyond all the other offerings. Because when most of us think about the offerings, it's blood and guts and who wants to go to entrails and all those things. This somehow speaks to us. I have sectioned it out, so we're going to just read 4 verses from the beginning of the special instruction, and then I think 10 verses from the end. So there's, let's see, I'm going to try Harold reading, and you'll see if you hear him and tell me if he's too echoey. And if he is, I will put him in a wind tunnel. Okay, so don't worry.
This is the ritual of the sacrifice of well-being that one may offer to the eternal. One who offers it for thanksgiving shall offer together with the sacrifice of thanksgiving unleavened cakes with oil mixed in, unleavened wafers spread with oil, and cakes of choice flour with oil mixed in and well soaked. This offering with cakes of leavened bread added shall be offered along with one's thanksgiving sacrifice of well-being. Out of this, the person shall offer one of each kind as a gift to the eternal. It shall go to the priest, who dash of the blood of the offering of well-being. And the flesh of the thanksgiving sacrifice of well-being shall be eaten on the day that it is offered. None of it shall be set aside until the morning.
So that's the beginning of the Zevach HaShlamim offering. It goes on, to specify, a specific time within the category. But the operative moment is that it is an offering. It clearly is aligned with the Thanksgiving offering. Maybe that's why it's offered and how it's offered. And then it has to be eaten. Okay. And then you get the capper on this. Harold, want to continue with the capper? We're now skipping down to verse 28.
And the Eternal One spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people thus: the offering to the Eternal from the sacrifice of well-being must be presented by the one who offers that sacrifice of well-being to the Eternal. One's own hands shall present the Eternal's offering by fire. The offerer shall present the fat with the breast to be elevated as an elevation offering before the Eternal. The priest shall turn the fat into smoke on the altar, and the breast shall go to Aaron and his sons. And the right thigh from the sacrifice of well-being you shall present to the priest as a gift. He from among Aaron's sons who offers the blood of the fat of the offering of well-being shall get the right thigh as his portion. I have taken the breast of elevation offering and the thigh of the gift offering from the Israelites from their sacrifices of well-being, and given them to Aaron the priest and to his sons as their due from the Israelites for all time. Those shall be the perquisites of Aaron and the perquisites of his sons and the eternal's offerings. Once they have been inducted to serve the eternal as priests, these eternal commandments to be given them once they have been anointed as a due from the Israelites for all time throughout the ages. Such are the rituals of the burnt offering, the meal offering, the purgation offering, the reparation offering, the offering of ordination, and the sacrifice of well-being, with which the Eternal charged Moses on Mount Sinai, when commanded that the Israelites present their offerings to the Eternal in the wilderness of Sinai.
All right, thank you, Bob. Thank you, Harold. So on a shot level, questions should be coming forth. What is this offering? What's the nature of this offering, which is somehow unique? And what are you noting about how this offering is offered that may speak to its essence or purpose? Clarence.
It reminds me, perhaps correct or incorrect hypothesis, of the Mishkan and how one goes with an open heart to give something of importance to the construction of the Mishkan.
So it's open heart, and Clarence, I think, is rightly identifying,
It's a voluntary.
yeah, it's voluntary, right? It's a free will offering, it seems, right?
Question, in verse 14, 15,
Yeah,
it talks about a cake offering, bread offering, all of a sudden you're dashing blood on it. Kind of incongruous with blood.
well,
Also not healthy.
right, the blood comes from some animal sacrifice, right? So it sounds like there is some animal involved, and it's offered with unleavened cakes with oil mixed in. I don't think they're dashing the blood on the unleavened cakes. I think they're doing something else with the unleavened cakes.
So there's also leavened bread added as well, unless it's incorrect, number 13. This offering, this cake's of leavened bread.
Yeah, I don't think so. Where's the Hebrew? Was it 13 or 14? 13. Al chalot lechem chametz. Yakriv Korbano. I think that says, they write this offering with cakes of leavened bread added. Shall be I thought it was unleavened. But you think that means al, like do not? No, I guess it is. But I for some reason I always thought it was unleavened.
Actually, it has significance.
Go ahead.
In the daily traditional liturgy,
Yeah.
with the exception of 2 times in the year,
Yeah.
Erev Yom Kippur during the weekday, Erev Yom Kippur, and on the eve of Passover. With those 2 exceptions, there is actually a psalm that is recited that commemorates the Thanksgiving offering we just read about.
Right.
It is not recited on both those days because of the leavened bread portion. Leaven that is supposed to be eaten, and you have a full day to eat all of it.
Right.
Because that would go into Yom Kippur fast. It's not recited on the eve of Yom Kippur.
And of course on Pesach.
And on Pesach, the same thing. The
Yeah.
eve of Passover,
Yeah.
because the altar has
I
to
love
be
that.
cleared
I love that.
essentially by midday when they bring the afternoon off.
God forbid. God forbid.
So that actually has significance.
Yeah.
Going beyond that, with regard to leavened bread, as part of the Shavuot offering, there is the reference to the bread from being brought from the fresh, I mean, it's the whole concept of the count of the barley. But you also at that point in time bring the first wheat offering. So there is a stream that runs within the sacrificial rite.
Right.
That is actually tied to eating leavened bread. Plus, you had the weekly show bread.
Yes, yes, right. So, but what Lloyd is alluding to is, this is for a meal. Right, the bread is actually for a meal. Don't miss that. Don't miss that. So what else? What else is hitting you? I see Zeb.
So the story is told in two different ways.
Yeah,
I mean, it's verse 11, right?
yeah,
Talks about the sacrifice of well-being.
yeah.
And then they repeat it in verse 29. The difference is that the second rendition is probably written by a redactor called P, priest, because that really highlights, and I don't know if it brings us closer to home or not, but in the second version,
Yeah,
it's all about the priest and the priest getting stuff and the priest doing things. The first ritual has very little mentioning of the priest.
right.
So I don't
The
know
first
what it
one,
has to do
yes,
with home,
yes.
but it's two different writers.
So Zeb is noting that there are layers or strands in the Bible, in Torah, and it could be that part of it is from a priestly redactor or editor. The Graf Wellhausen theory of commentary and of Torah biblical criticism. What's important, however, Tom, are you trying to do something? Yeah, I would just throw your phone away if I were you. So what's going on here? At the beginning, we see the open sort of invitation to bring a sacrifice of well-being, a zebach shlamim, and it's specified as zebach hatodah, the sacrifice of thanksgiving. And then Zebi notes that, rightfully so, the priest seems to be the focus, maybe, but I think it's not just the priest who's the focus. I think it is the ritual that's the focus, because it's quite clear. It's not just the priest. It says, "Hamakriv et zevach shlamav laronai yavi et korbano mi zevach shlamav yadav tibiem," meaning the one who chooses to bring a sacrifice of well-being to Adonai should bring it with his own or her own hands. Meaning, you got to do it yourself. And there's an ambiguity in here. Who's doing the sacrificing? It seems like the priest. However, it seems like there's involvement somehow of the one who brings. Neil.
So you can't be back in Jerusalem, sending this up to Tel Aviv, and you can't send a messenger to do it. You gotta show up to Tel Aviv yourself, hand it over to the priest.
You can't do what those Jews do at Larchmont Temple and sit home and have your Pinot Grigio and watch services on TV. You gotta come here. You gotta bring the offering with your own hands. Crucial, crucial. So we're getting hints now, because if our koshi is, how is this unique offering somehow the ideal, the ultimate offering for us as Israel and for the Holy One? And how does it lead us towards home? The first piece is we have to bring it. The second piece is it's a meal that has to be eaten in 24 hours. What else are you noticing about this? Anything? Any questions coming from it? If you don't have questions, I'm going to do a shot tome of the text, and I will help you see the questions. One question. No, don't go yet, Raj. Hold on one second. So you see that it's brought and then it's eaten, right? Right. So none of it should be set aside until morning. Almost like the Pesach meal in a way. This is a meal. This offering is meant to be a meal. Who's eating? Good question. And as we're seeing, the one who offers it has to bring it with his or her own hands. Interestingly, it doesn't specify male, female at all. And then you'll see that this offering uniquely is a, what does it say? I gotta find the right verse. Chok olam me'et b'nei Yisrael, an eternal, unending ordinance for the people of Israel. Meaning, this is not going to stop. The Zevach Shlamim has to continue. It's a chok olam, an eternal law. This sacrifice must be important. Lisa.
So it's interesting in verse 36, I think it is, that God is looking out for the priests, that they'll be that giving them this sacrifice to eat for all time.
Yeah, I think that God is looking out for the priest. I think, and the priest family. Also, if you just go to the breakdown, so the right thigh from your sacrifice of well-being shall you present to the priest as a gift. Why? It's tasty. It's the good part. You're not gonna give the priest the tuchus. It's gonna be tough. Come on. Boy.
There's a subset. I mean, in a sense, the priests are on the take.
Let me just quote Lloyd, writer for The Guardian, among other places. The priests are on the take. That's the headline. Go ahead.
The Bible prescribes a series of gifts that are to be given to the priests. This is one of them. They get a cut of the sacrifices. In addition, when you talk about consumption.
Yes.
What's not here is, there's a definite portion that goes to the priest, and that's a regular occurrence. But also the party that brings there are certain sacrifices from which the party that brings the sacrifice is also allowed to have a meal with. And it's not just the Passover sacrifice is the archetype of that sacrifice.
Right.
There is a subset of these types of sacrifices that are called Shalmei Chagiga, the festive fat offering.
Yep.
You used to have, back in the day, the pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And as part of the pilgrimage to Jerusalem, families would offer in connection with, but not necessarily on the holiday, these types of offerings where they too consume.
So what is Lloyd implying here, which is really important? This is a festive meal for everybody. This somehow is that's the obligation, that you will now share a meal. The priests are eating, you're eating, right? And the priest may be eating in this certain precinct, but the feeling is you're bringing something that will feed everybody. Jane is going to be the last comment, unless Debbie's hand is still raised. Then we're going to go to the reverends.
I just have a question.
How
many people, it says that on verse 15, none of it shall be set aside until morning. But how much food was there and how much could you eat? Is this offering the one person who's offering per day or multiple people? Because if it's multiple people, how could you eat everything and not set it aside until morning?
It sounds like, yes, it sounds like there are people, like as Wood implied, families, tribal units in a way, but really extended families, mishpacha, coming to partake, as well as the priest wasn't a single individual. Remember, the Kohen has lots of people to feed. So I think it could be consumed. The key is it is consumed. And the key is it's offered in a way that seems to me unique. This is Zevach Zevi, go ahead. You still have your hand. Zevi, go ahead.
You know, again, it's not one of the verses that you are going to refer to later, but verse 36, somebody is being anointed. It's so out of the blue. All of a sudden he says, the eternal commanded to be given to them once they have been anointed as due from the Israelites. So, and they use the word mashchu, which is like messianic later on, right? Mashchu.
Yeah.
So who's being anointed? And why is it important they're being anointed? And what does that have to do with going home? It's just an interesting verse.
And I will refer to it actually, but thank you, right? So what they're saying is, because we remember what happens in the next portion is the priests get anointed, the priests get installed. So they're referring to, listen, if you're a rabbinic intern, you really don't get to do this. But once you're already a Kohen, Taka, you're all good. I will smuggle you in a little bit of my breast piece and whatever. Okay. Anyway, so let's Michael Feinberg, the real last comment.
Yeah, I would just like you to comment, Jeffrey, on the word Torah here, which has been translated as ritual. I mean, this sacrifice is not a statute. It is not a law. It is a Torah. It is a teaching. It is so how do you see the status of the sacrifice as compared with other rules, other mitzvot, other statutes?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I just I'm going to quote you another section, like at the beginning of chapter 6, when we get to verse 7, Zot Torat HaMincha Hakrev Ota B'nei Yisrael B'nei Aharon. So this is the Torah of the Mincha. It will say the same thing for the Asham and the Chatat, because they are really using the word Torah as this is the instruction. This is the ritual you should follow. We know Torah is from the root, maybe from the root to point, like directionally. So this is the directions, I think. Let's jump in, because I won't have enough time, because I got too much commentary, and we may not do it all. So what can we understand? Let me just throw this out. Shlamim sounds like what word to all of you Hebrew speakers? Isn't it? Sounds like? The root is? Whole. Well, what's the root? Shalom.
Shalom, yeah.
It's peace. It's peace. So I looked in the BDB, the Brown Driver Briggs this morning, because I have a unique Brown Driver Briggs. I'm not going to tell you this story now. Good impulse control, stop. Bernie Bamberger's Brown Driver Briggs, I bought for a quarter. Bernie Bamberger was a great Bible scholar and rabbi in New York City and teacher at HUC. So I looked in the Brown Driver Briggs under Shalem, the root. And here's some of the meanings that will come out in the 3 pages. To be complete, to be uninjured, to be safe and sound, to be free from fault, to be at peace, to be at covenant with, to greet in friendship, to pay homage to submit oneself to. Keep all these in mind. They're really useful as we think about, so what is this shlamim for? Because to say it's a well-being offering doesn't describe it enough. Rashi, we always start with Rashi because we sort of have to, because Rashi's the guy. Andy Sturgos, can you be my Rashi?
Yes, okay. Rashi, they are called Shlamim, because they bring peace into the world. Alternatively, they are called Shlamim because there is peace within them.
All right, so notice that Rashi's being non-committal here. What else is new? He's just citing sources. These sources are coming from discussion in the Talmud. So Rashi says, well, it could be that when you offer them, they make a more peaceful world, or somehow within them, there's the hope or the goal of peace is contained within them.
Do you really think that's the list, or do you think that Rashi can actually, it's easy to say that both instead of either or.
Yes, so Clarence is wisely saying, Rashi, who was a great, he's the Cliff Notes. It's both and. It doesn't have to be either or. Now watch what Baruch Levine, wonderful Bible teacher and scholar, will do. Who's next on my list? Carol Scheffler. Give us the Baruch Levine.
Okay. The Hebrew term shlamim has puzzled commentators since antiquity. The Septuagint,
right? The Greek Bible translation
gives it three renderings. The usual peace offerings echoes the Vulgate's Pacificus, the peace between the worshiper and God brought through bringing sacrifice. Some scholars have taken their cue from a statement in Solomon's prayer at the dedication of the temple, and may you be wholehearted, Shalem im, the Lord our God. In this context of dedication, this establishes shlamim as a sacrifice intended to reaffirm the covenant between God and the Israelite people. But with comparative evidence to suggest that the term originally meant gift of greeting, shalamim is offered when one greets another by saying shalom. It is therefore better rendered a sacred gift of greeting. Zevach, implying food offering, is then best understood to celebrate a sacred meal.
Yeah. So what are all these layers helping us with? How are they putting together a little bit of the puzzle? What shlamim is? Well, so we get all these different references, really good remez texting. It's the desire to be wholehearted, shalem im, God. So to be reconnected. So in some way, it's reestablishing a relationship. It's a recovenanting offering. But the mode is unique. The mode is a meal. It's a festive meal. It is celebrating a moment with a feast of thanks. That's what it seems to be, which sounds very simple and lovely. Why is this different than other offerings, by the way? Can you think of another offering or another reason you'd bring an offering? Boy.
Because you have to.
Because you have to.
You have the daily offerings.
The tamid, the daily.
Guilt offering.
Guilt offering. Jane, I don't know why you, of course, mentioned that, but it's okay. You can bring one anytime. Yes, the guilt offering, right? The guilt offering. The asham, the sin offering, the chatat. So what are we saying? These are not offerings out of, oh my God, that this happened and I better go to the temple and offer a couple turtle doves, because if not, who knows what? This is an offering that comes from a different place. Lisa.
I just have a question of if you could explain what zevach means.
Yes, yeah. So it's the offering of food, right? It's the food offering. It's the food stuff, right? But it's really an offering. Different way to say it's a different mode, but it's the same thing as saying you could have said korban. But zevach implies the food itself that's going to be shared, which is crucial. We're sharing something here. One more little layer on shlamim before we go on, because shalom is obvious to us, right? We know how do you translate shalom? We tell little kids in religious school, kesher. Shalom means what? We tell them it means three things: hello, goodbye, and peace. That sounds also very simple, but it's not, because it means it's the way you connect with somebody. It's the way you leave somebody, and the goal of that, what happens in between, should be shalom. So that's what this offering is supposed to do. David Tzvi Hoffman. I have Jerry Goldman next on my little list. If Jerry's around, give us the David Tzvi Hoffman, Jerry. Shlamim derives from shalom.
Shalim derives from shalom, signifying the state of mind of the worshiper who enjoys peace and contentment. Recognizing that this has been achieved thanks to God. Or it may be that he seeks to attain such a state, since at present he suffers from despair and longs for God to help him restore a state of life equilibrium. The name is particularly apt if we accept the idea of peace and harmony for the altar, priests, and the worshiper who all share in it. It therefore constitutes a banquet of shalom, alluding to the harmony shlamim brings between the worshiper, the Lord, and those who serve.
So David Zvi Hoffman is looking for, as any good actor would, for what's my motivation in this scene? What's the motivation of the one who brings the shlamim? Could be that they're in a place that they feel content. They feel shalom, as Lloyd said, complete in their lives. Could be that they're not in that place, but they want to be in that place. And of course, in restoring the state of equilibrium, it becomes a feast or a banquet of shalom, where everybody feels more whole and connected because of that offering and the meal shared. So why would you bring it? You didn't do anything wrong, didn't incur any guilt. It's not the daily sacrifice you have to bring. Why would you bring it? What would be the motivation? Gratitude. Thank you, Dave. Gratitude. Raj, go ahead.
To answer your question, Rabbi, it's also because of I'm forgetting the word, but people were very scared of bad things happening to them. So to ward off evil, they would also if I'm at peace, I don't want my peace to be to suffer. So they would bring in the peace offering. So that was the shlamim. Yeah,
I love that. Philo, right? Remember Alexandrian Egypt, first century, in a way, Neoplatonist. But so what does Philo say? Philo says, I found this morning by accident, one who brings the shlamim has never met with any untoward happenings. That's the motivation. Meaning, nothing bad has ever happened to this person, and thus they bring a shlamim, which I thought was so curious, because who has that life? No one. But there's really something to it. We'll come back to it. I think there's something there. So what really is the motivation to bring this? Gratitude, worry about things are going well. I hope they don't take a downward turn. A desire to, right, as Clarence implied, a desire to bring more peace to the world, or a desire to continue the peace that I'm experiencing. So but it's free will. It's an open-armed offering where you are feeding, and you're feeding the priests and feeding your family as well. It's specified, of course, as Zevach HaTodah. Somehow, this is Thanksgiving. It's a Thanksgiving offering. So what now can we learn in unpacking that'll help us understand the shlamim? Look at the commentary on 12 and 13. You see 12 and 13? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. To see who's next on my list. I'm going to make somebody here read. Neil is reading.
Rashba, as the sages taught, 4 must offer thanksgiving. Those who have crossed the sea, those who have traversed the wilderness, one who has recovered from an illness, and a prisoner who has been set free.
So why are they saying this? Why is Rashi's grandson citing the Talmud on this? He's trying to give people motivations to offer Thanksgiving offerings. Why do you need to give people motivations to give Thanksgiving offerings? Why wouldn't they just do it themselves?
Is he reminding them?
Yeah, he's reminding them because most people don't think of it. When your life is good or you're feeling grateful, is your first thing, I really should go to temple. We should really go to Shabbat services. Some people, I would say, most people may not think that way. Or I really should give a donation to name your your cause, right? Lloyd?
This is the anti-Philo.
Yes.
Philo is basically saying, life is good, I know no grief. God says, hey, you have an option. Rashbam is saying something else, and Rashbam is actually more text-based.
Yeah.
Rashbam is going at scientific Talmud and Brachot, saying these were the people who bring it. And as a hangover from that, there's something known as reciting the Gomel blessing, which again, in traditional circles these days, there are these categories of people who are required to recite it, usually in public. Someone, as I mentioned, crossing the sea these days, flight isn't an issue, but most folks who don't. But then there is going through wilderness. Again, I don't know too many people who are trekking across
The wilderness.
Yeah,
Right.
Saudi Arabia's desert. on
Yeah,
camel.
yeah.
But then there are two others. One is someone who has a serious illness and gets out of the hospital.
Yeah.
Or a woman who has just given birth. And the other is someone who gets out of prison.
So so Lloyd is talking about an extension, which is Gomel, which is really the anti-Philo, as if to say there are times that you should be required to give thanks. And what do in our ritual? We put the Gomel blessing in twice a year into our ritual, into the Larchmont Temple. And I don't know if other Reform congregations do it, I'm sure they do. But right on Pesach, we have everybody on Pesach come say Gomel. Why? Because Pesach is the festival of rebirth. All of us are somehow reborn. We have to program in thanks because it's not always our tendency to give it. Carol Scheffler had her hand up, I think. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I was just going to comment that at this congregation in Brooklyn I go to occasionally, they call different groups up for Aliyah, and it's different every week. And it might be anyone who's dealing with a job, issue that is causing them stress, or anyone who is looking forward to seeing their parents. It's very specific. And I think the effect of it is much probably like what Rashbam is referring to. By singling them out, the effect is it's telling them that their story matters and that they're both individual and part of a community.
Nice. And it's affirming that, in fact, there is some kernel, in this moment, there is some kernel of gratitude to be given. Clarence.
So it's curious that Philo would have that comment, so it must be deeper than just superficial.
Yeah, I think it is.
Maybe it's the case that Philo is saying that it's an attitude that one's supposed to have toward life. For example, Job. Irrespective of all the problems, it's how you look at those problems, what your frame of reference is. So
Clarence is getting drashy, but he's on target here. And he and Lloyd always whisper, so I know that they're whispering mystical things over there, right? So yes, Philo's a very sophisticated philosopher. He knows that as one who brings it has never experienced met with anything untoward. Are you kidding me? Philo met with things that were untoward, things that were not good in his life. It's about attitude. It's about, even in those moments, can you find a way to give thanks? I think. Let's keep going a little bit more, right? Elaine Chapman, I have you next reading if you can. You see the Haktav HaKabbalah. He's gonna break down for us. So what is Zevach HaTodah? Right? When you want to say thank you in Hebrew, you say Todah Rabbah. Thanks a lot. But the word Todah has within it perhaps more implication. Go ahead.
Jeffrey, just before you go forward, later on in Deuteronomy, didn't God have to keep reminding Israel not to forget how he had blessed them? He said, when you go into the land, don't forget I'm the one that brought you in.
Yeah, and throughout the book of Numbers, the people of Israel walk through the wilderness fetching. That's all they do. There are 11 instances of Israelite fetching in the Torah. And all they do is complain. And they want to go back to Egypt because life was so good there. Are you serious? They had manna to eat, everything, they were going to be fine. But So thanks may not be a characteristic response of Israel. Give us, Elaine, the Hatava Kabbalah.
According to Shmuel David Lozado, the rabbinic term Hoda'ah, which is used for thanksgiving in connection with giving praise, is rooted in Hodah in the biblical Hebrew. This is because the root of that word is yada, that one gives, reaches a hand to someone from whom one has received something. It implies the subordination of one's will, in this case, to a higher power. This submission does not reflect fear, rather a recognition for which we pray to pay homage.
Right. So what is this Zevach HaTodah? What is the description here of this, the way the Shlamim plays out? It is, and it's, by the way, it's ancient temple ritual. It is, in a way, reaching out, being received, in order to recognize that your well-being is not because of your efforts alone. That's big. I will tell you that in the Talmud, the Zevach HaTodah had to be accompanied with song. And so the Levitical priest sang, and you were supposed to sing along. I checked it out this morning. I was right. I thought, and I was right. So it's unique as well as a sacrifice. That sacrifice has to be. What when you are singing in your right, there's some added joy. There's an added measure. So there's something that's supposed to be celebrated here, held up, affirmed.
Going with it, the term for altar in Hebrew is mizbeach.
Yes, nice.
And it is the root of zevach, which on one hand simply connotes an offering. But if you push further, zevach can also come with a connotation of joy or sacrifice that's brought whole. Because you then get, over here, there's reference to Zevach Todah, Thanksgiving Zevach. You then get into the book of Numbers and have all the princelings delivering sacrifices. And then you have the word that constantly repeated is Zevach, and then there's the summa word. Where once again, total herd of animals for sacrifices of well-being. And it's once again at Zevach Shlamim.
Yeah. So the idea that Zevach and Mizbeach, what is Zevach? It's the place, right? It's the place you bring it to the Mizbeach. And the implication is wholeness of heart. Look at the Biur. The Biur quickly is a nice comment. Gail, are you around to read? Give us the Biur because it's just going to underscore the motivation that I think all these three are talking about. How you bring this special offering.
This sacrifice is motivated by joy, arising from a sense of gratitude for one's state of well-being. By thanking God, one draws upon himself a state of divine grace. In contrast to this, there are those who live unmindfully, thinking the might of my own hand has helped me through. So
this is an offering, as both Hatava Kabbalah and the Biur underscores, acknowledges that your well-being is not due to you alone. There are, and if you think about it, shlamim comes from the verb shalem, to be complete, which means my completion, my being complete, doesn't mean just me. It means I understand the interconnections, right, around me. Very big. So you put all this on the stove. We have one of those big stoves, right? The Viking stove. Thank you very much. And we're cooking. And then you get what I think is maybe the crucial verse. When one brings his peace offering or her peace offering to Adonai, he or she must present it, him or herself. Their own hand shall bring the Lord's offering, Adonai's offering. Their own hands. But the implication is they're bringing it to somebody else's hands. as Rashi makes pretty clear. Lisa, have you read for me?
No.
Would you read? Under 29?
Yeah, and then can I make a comment after?
Yeah.
His own hand shall bring, the Cohen shall take, the hand of the bringer shall be on top, and the hand of the Cohen below, that they lift the offering together as one.
Why do I love this? Why do I love this? What does it say?
It's sort of connected to what I was going to say with the part about the Todah and the root. It might be related to like knowing intimately with
yes. Yeah. So it's even though there's a little bit of differentiation on the root, yes, yeah, right. But there's another layer that's in the other end of the root. But I love the implication, at least metaphorically. What is this saying? The hand of the bringer's on top, the hand of the receiver's on the bottom, and they lift it together. It's an elevation offering, right? When you lift up something in a like, when my friend Reverend Bill, right, when I was talking with Reverend Bill at the diner monthly, he would always say, I want to lift that up. And I always wondered where that came from. And I once asked him, I said, why do you always say I want to lift that up? And he said, it's from the offering, the elevation offering. And I said, Reverend Bill, you are so Jewish. That is so great. I love that. So this is a mutual lifting up. You bring your offering, Dave, to me. I'm the Kohen. You put your hand in one place. I put my hand in another place. We lift it up together. That's called covenant. Wow. Right.
So, Rabbi, as I was reading this, it reminded me of a story that you shared once about the offering of the wine. And I don't know whether it was your grandfather or it was one of your old rabbis. And the way they held the glass, you had mentioned, it was an offering to the god. So that's why it was on the bottom of the hand and not being held. I hope you understand what I'm talking about. It was the way you.
It was my teacher in Young Judea, Steve Copeland. Steve Copeland is now a teacher at Hebrew College in Brookline, and an amazing teacher generations. So Steve taught me that you don't take hold of the cup when you make a kiddush. You put your hand under the cup. Why? It's an offering. You're raising it up, and you're hoping that God takes it from the other side. That was Steve. Steve was very mystical in his younger days. But I love that, Raj. I think it's beautiful. And I think it implies the same thing. Why is it so important that his own hands bring? Again, this is the Talmud, I think, just affirms this. Lisa, can you just read this too? So I want to get this one out. It is written here.
It is written here, his own hand shall bring, and elsewhere the Cohen shall take. Just as there the Cohen takes part in Shlamim, and just as there the one who brings takes part. How is this affected? The Cohen places his hand under the one who brings. So should all offerings be like Shlamim. So all are involved.
Again, it is making a connection where there otherwise would be none. The offering is not just the meal. The offering is somehow connecting all parts to make them feel more whole. Zeb.
Sorry, I want to go back to home, which is your theme. And
Go
I was
ahead.
looking in the text. I was looking for home. And I think it's verse 34 and verse 36. In italics, you quoted that Zebach HaShlamim is offered and given to Aaron and his sons. It says it says plural from the Israelites, the community, right? And then it repeats the same verse. Verse 36 once again says, as due from the Israelites for all times, and then he adds throughout the ages. If that's not community building, I don't know what else is. But this is definitely home. This is
beautiful.
Community building.
Yeah, no, you're working for me. I appreciate that. So this is B'nai Yisrael. You're bringing it, The Goldsteins ain't always bringing it, but they're bringing it on behalf of, and in fact, why is this a unique sacrifice? It's not hard to figure out. Look at the Vayikra Rabbah that I could have put under any verse, and Zeb just noted one of the two verses. Rabbi Pinchas and Rabbi Levi said in the name of Rabbi Menachem HaGaliyah, in the world to come, remember Olam Haba, when the Mashiach will have come and everything on earth will be at one, all sacrifices will be annulled except Zevach HaShlamim, the sacrifices of well-being, as well as all prayers will be annulled except the prayer of thanksgiving. This is the only Chok Olam that is really Olam, meaning this is the only eternal ordinance that really is meant for all eternity, as far as sacrifices go. Why this one of all ones? Why this Thanksgiving? This shlamim, this longing for wholeness and completeness. Well,
In the world to come, you're not asking for anything.
well, now, so beautiful. In the world to come, you're not asking for nothing. And by the way, he didn't say nothing. Bob Coulter would never say nothing. He said anything, right? So in the world to come, the world is at one. It's at peace. So why do you have to spend the time giving thanks? I mean, everybody's obviously grateful. I mean, it's a good life.
This is similar to Shabbat. We're trying to bring that time now.
So say it a little louder, Clarence.
We're trying to bring that time in the future now.
Right. So Clarence is saying, right, he's giving you my understanding of Shabbat is it's the holiness recycling center, right? Shabbat is the one day a week when we have, as Larry Kirshner teaches, the spiritual fiction that the world is at one and that life is good. And we try to think of how could we make it feel like this every day of the week. So maybe the Zevach HaShlamim is to teach us, even when life feels right, to keep it going. Or maybe it's because knowing what Philo said is not simple. Philo, who said, the one who brings this has never met with anything untoward in his life. Philo knows that's not true. So Philo's saying that as if to say, I'm asking you to bring an attitude, a life perspective. I'm asking you to think about this Zevach HaShlamim and the thanksgiving you bring in a way that may be counterintuitive to the way your lives go. Go to the Drash. We're only going to read, I think we're just going to read the Marinus and then we're going to go to the Soda because I'm not going to have time if I don't do that. So we got the Marinus. I'm going to, if I can have Hillary start the Marinus, that'd be great. Hillary, if you're okay to read. And then I was next to my list. And then I'm going to ask Ellen Handler Spitz to read after Hillary. Marinus, remember, is our Musar Institute guy. He was here, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago as our scholar, teacher for the fall. He was wonderful. And we read his book, Everyday Holiness, as well as that other book, I forget what it's called. And Marinus is about practicing Musar, sort of spiritual awareness, 18 different key qualities and characteristics that help us become better people. One of them is gratitude. How does that work? Hillary.
Hi, I'm a little where am I?
You are, you see where it says Alan Marinus for most of us?
Okay, that's what I thought. For most of us tend to focus so heavily on the deficiencies in our lives that we barely notice the good that counterbalances them. There is no limit to what we don't have, and if that is where we focus, then our lives will be filled with endless dissatisfaction. It is also true that even if we are aware of our gifts, we tend to grow callous to those fine things that pepper our lives, so that after a while, we no longer even see that they are there. When gratitude is a living reality well established in our hearts, however, we constantly refresh our vision so that we make accurate note of the good that surrounded us. Who is rich? The rabbis answer. He who rejoices in his own lot. Should I go on?
Yeah, you're doing great.
Okay. The Hasidic teacher, Rebbe Nachman of Bratslav, writes, gratitude rejoices with her sister joy and is always ready to light a candle and celebrate. Gratitude doesn't much like the old cronies of boredom and despair or of taking life for granted. In our lives, the Torah asks us to recite blessings for everything, from the most mundane activities, like eating, to the most extraordinary, like seeing a rainbow, all of which help us to focus on and appreciate that which we might otherwise not know we have. Yet gratitude doesn't often come easily to us, and it takes some effort to develop this through practice. When we practice gratitude, we make an effort to heighten our awareness of the gifts we already possess and to relieve ourselves of the exhausting pursuit of the ever-receding targets of the things we think we lack. No wonder gratitude satisfies the soul. It frees us from the compulsive grasping and so gives us back our lives.
So something about this offering makes us whole, enables us to refocus, enables us to leave behind, priorities that really aren't priorities, a perspective that isn't healthy, a pursuit that is leading us in the wrong direction. So it's really powerful, right? We're supposed to say 100 blessings a day, the rabbis teach in the mission. Why 100 blessings a day? Did they think they're not saying you have to say 100. There's no tote board. Oh, shoot, I'm at 89. I bet it's 11 o'clock. I bet I get some. They're saying bless everything. If you bless everything, if you stop, and what's a blessing? A sacred spotlight, teaches Joel Brishet. It's a sacred spotlight shining down and saying, this moment is worthy of blessing. This moment is worthy of blessing. Jews bless going to the bathroom. Jews bless eating a nice piece of fruit. Jews bless seeing a whole crowd of people. Jews bless hearing of bad news of death. Jews bless hearing of good news. You keep going. Every aspect of food, every aspect of connection, almost everything you see. Oh, you see a rainbow? Say a blessing. You see a leader? Say a blessing. In order to acknowledge, right? Acknowledgement leads to gratitude. Ellen Handler Spitz. We're going to finish this up and then we're going to talk about it. In the Musar Classic. He's going to unmute him.
Okay. In the Musar Classic, Duties of the Heart, Rabbi Bakya ibn Pakuda tells us that there isn't a person who hasn't been given gifts, but we tend to suffer a kind of blindness that keeps us from seeing and appreciating. He identifies 3 reasons why we fail to see the abundance for which we ought to be grateful. First, he says we tend not to feel appreciative because we are too absorbed in worldly things. We can never be fully satisfied, and so we pursue them endlessly. Second, we are so used to our gifts that we grow accustomed to them, appearing as unremarkable features of our lives. And third, we are so focused on the travails we suffer in this world that we forget that both our very being is a good thing that has been gifted to us. We are experts in wanting and complaining. And even if the problems are real and things aren't perfect, we seldom give due appreciation to all we have in hand. Yes, the glass is certainly half empty, but at the very same time, it is also half full. The Hebrew term for gratitude is kakanat hato. Oh, should I go on?
Yeah, please.
And which literally means recognizing the good. The good is already there. And practicing gratitude means being fully aware of the good that is already yours and finding a way to give thanks. If you've lost your job, but you still have your health, you have something to be grateful for. If you can't move around except in a wheelchair, but your mind is sharp as ever, you have something to be grateful for. If you have broken a string on your violin, you still have 3 more, and you have something to be grateful for.
Go ahead, Lloyd, I see it, see you. Go ahead.
Two pieces. One is, this is essentially Dayenu on a day-to-day basis.
Dayenu, I love that. Somebody write that down. This is Dayenu on a day-to-day basis.
The second piece, which is more formal and is textual, is you get to, as I mentioned, the pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And in the book of Deuteronomy, there are verses that record, and there's a tension in this. Thou shalt not appear before the eternal empty-handed. That's a conclusion of one verse.
Yeah.
The next verse becomes, but each with his own gift, according to the blessing that the eternal your God has bestowed upon you. So on one hand, there's a sense of, you owe me.
Yeah.
And the next breath it says, with gratitude.
Right, right. Because we all have gifts to give. We all have something to celebrate, even with the stuff that we're going through. Now, some stuff is easier than others. Some stuff is not easy. So it's hard when you're suffering, struggling, health, emotional, spiritual, when your kids aren't so good, when your parents aren't so good, when, you know, profession is not what you want it to be, when relationships aren't great, there's always things wrong. It's inevitable. Philo wasn't saying there aren't things wrong. Philo was saying, can you, with the things wrong, still find a way? And it's called hakarat hatov, to recognize the good. That's hard. Rabbi Michal of Zlotchov is my favorite Hasidic saying. It's one of my top 3, I'm going to be honest. Rabbi Michal of Zlotchov said, I was blessed in my life because I never needed anything until I had. That was my grandfather's song. He once won the Irish sweepstakes, won $5,000. He thought he was rich. I was way before I was born. Paid off his debts, you know, to the Jewish Loan Society, who charged the lowest interest, called, you know, and gave each of his kids money. But he was the most simple, sweet, celebratory man. If he had $4, he'd give me a coin, right? So he celebrated every day. Wow.
There's a parallel here with ancient Stoicism.
So I can't hear you because there's some sort of noise going on.
There's a parallel here with ancient Stoicism.
The parallel with ancient Stoicism is?
You can have everything you want if you only want what you can have. The best way to get a good seat at the amphitheater is to wait until the performance is over. Basically, get plugged into the way of nature.
Yeah.
You'll see that things are the way they are because that's the way they are, and you'll have peace.
Yes.
Ataraxia.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, so you can have everything you want if you only want what you have, right? It's living in attunement. Now, this is not easy to do, even though all of us are shaking our heads and saying, oh yeah, not easy to do, nor, especially when you're going through all the crap, but it makes us feel more whole within our world and ourselves, maybe even with God. Let's go to the sode, because the sode is so good, and we're going to talk about this. Thank you, Raj, I appreciate it. Notice how I'm saying the thank you to Raj. I would do that anyways. Not just if we had this portion. We're going to skip Rally Shavi Dartson, though he's very good. We're going to Shoshana Gelfand, who wrote in the Women's Commentary. Because now these are two who are going to challenge us about what Shalami means and how is it that it speaks to the lives we live and helps us approach home. by incorporating its understandings. Who's up next? I have Mitzi. Mitzi wants to read a little. That'd be awesome. Mitzi, give us a little Shoshana Gelfin. Vayikra.
Starting with the rabbis of antiquity?
No. We are under Rabbi Shoshana Gelfin. Vayikra is the Bible's how-to. It's under So, the last page.
Oh, Vayikra. Yeah, I turned the page. Okay. Vayikra is the Bible's how-to book for creating and maintaining relationships between God and between people. The Zavach Shlamim is then the model sacrifice. Compared with the Olah, what is striking about the Shlamim is that the description of it does not use the word Adam, the male generic for humankind, for the one offering it. On the contrary, the text goes out of its way to specify that the Shlamim can be male or female, offered by anyone.
So establishing that all of us should be giving this Thanksgiving, this gratitude offering. So now she's going to get into, so how is it that it helps us understand our life in a different way? Go ahead, Nancy.
The goal of the Shlamim is thus unique, not to lose one's own sense of self in the sacrifice, but rather to maintain distinction, to coexist in peace with those who are different. The Shlamim is thus only partially sacrificed, the other portions given to the priests, and the remainder eaten by the offerer, along with guests and relatives at a festive meal. The Shlamim represents the closeness made real through sharing, each person who partakes contributing his or her own uniqueness, so that collectively a sense of wholeness is achieved. Just as God calls to Moses at the beginning of Leviticus, demonstrating the desire for relationship, so too Jacob calls his family together to make the journey back home, affirmed through Zavach, sharing that same sacred meal. This yearning for peace, for completeness, is only achieved by each individual coming to the sacrificial meal table and finding his or her place. The purpose of Vayikra is not to overwhelm us with rules of how to offer sacrifice properly. Rather, its ultimate intention is to underscore the importance of relationships. Being close to others brings us closer to God and closer to the self we need to see and be.
Right, so why do I love the Shoshana Gelfin? Because she's giving us a very current and contemporary understanding, but she's trying to do it in connecting with, this is about, so when you bring the sacrifice, it's supposed to be mikem, as we remember. It has to be from you, from your, so she's underscoring that and saying, when you bring shlamim, it's not a sacrifice of self, it's an affirmation of self. What is something, and it's all affirmed through a sacred meal. The Kohanim are eating, you and your family are eating, maybe God's tasting too. And what she made me think about was Passover Seder. At Passover Seders, this I'm sure is true of every table, there are a collection of individuals around the table, even if it's family, because no two family are alike, and they each have their own stuff. They each bring their own uniqueness, right? Whether it's generational or whether it's, crazy Uncle Marvin, right? So it is inevitable, but that's what makes it beautiful. And the gift of that sharing of meal and ritual, I'm talking Passover because it's coming up, I'm just thinking about it, is that it helps everybody feel connected. It helps everybody feel more at peace. Shalom. Oftentimes, Passover Seders are not so peaceful. They still bring a sense of wholeness and connection, I think. Could be the same as Clarence mentioned before about a Shabbat meal. When you take the time to have a Shabbat meal with friends or kids or whatever, it's beautiful. Doesn't have to be a Shabbat meal, by the way. Last night at 10 o'clock, my kids were home. They came in from the city. My daughter was home from work. We ate. Eating and schmoozing together was beautiful. And believe me, they're individuals. They're each bringing their own sense of self to the table, but that's beautiful. So here's the real bottom line, because as we're talking about gratitude and Thanksgiving, we're looking at a world at war. We're looking at people suffering. We're looking at a predominance of refugees. We're looking at feeling broken. How do you deal with that? How do you accord, the desire to give Thanksgiving with the brokenness of life, which is impossible to ignore? I have Carol Sharp next. If Carol Sharp wants to give us the kicker. It's Rabbi Ellie Monk.
Okay. Peace is the supreme objective, and the Shlamim are meant to reestablish peace between the Creator and his creation, between man and his fellow, between the individual and his conscience. For our sages, however, Shalom is not a fact of creation, neither is it a moral doctrine of pacifism, the renunciation of all force at the cost of sacrificing sacred principles. On the contrary, peace requires constant, at times vigilant effort to reach a state in which the conflicts of our society are overcome and the antagonistic forces within human nature become attuned to a vast system of universal harmony crowned by the kingdom of God on earth. Since the time when the harmony of paradise was disrupted by human sin, men have been on a permanent mission to devote the best of themselves to restoring the original splendor of that peace and harmony. Shalom endures as our greatest universal ideal, the realization of which depends on humankind's will and God's blessing.
Man, oh man, okay, stop the share, Raj, so we can see each other, because we just have to talk about, so Ellie Monk is giving us the challenge here. He says something that's so brilliant. Oh, I gotta change my view. How do I change my view? View, wait a second, I'm gonna see everybody. Gallery, I wanna see gallery. There we go, there's everybody. So how do we change, right? So what is Ellie Monk saying to us that I think is so core and essential in a broken world? Shalom is not a fact of creation. So unlike Rashi, who was hedging his bets, both and, Ellie Monk is saying, bringing the shlamim, the offering of wholeness, it's a free will offering, but you're bringing it because you know the world is not yet whole, because there is conflict. And, I mean, Ellie Monk is writing after World War II. Peace requires constant, at times vigilant effort to reach a state in which the conflicts of our society are. He's saying you got to be ready to fight for peace. You don't just bring the offering. You don't just sing at the altar. You don't just share the meal. You go out and you build it. You reach out. You realize where the conflict exists and you try to save people who are, at the hands of the aggressor. There's something very compelling, I think, about what Ellie Monk is saying to us. It is our mission to bring shalom. So the offering we bring to the altar, the mizbeach, the zebach, is supposed to motivate us to make it real in the world. Jane, your hands up.
Yeah, I'm just curious about something. Is this similar or originating in the breaking bread together?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think on a basic level, as we said before, it's all about breaking bread together. But there's a lot of people who don't want to break bread with you, Jane, or me, or any of us. To sit at the same table with somebody is a major thing. What is President Zelensky calling for? To sit at the table with the Russians who want to kill his people, but he wants to resume talks. That's the first step. So we understand this is not easy. I think that the upshot for me, which I think is so compelling, is You bring the shlamim offering even when your world lacks shalom. It's an offering that calls on you. You bring it, you share it, and then you go and you say, all right, where are the places that need a little of this in our world, in our lives? And it doesn't just mean, being the peacemaker, right? President Zelensky was a comedian. He was very good, right? We know his story. And now he's a hero because he's standing up, willing to fight for shalom in a place that's at war. I leave this with you just to say, we just studied sacrifice for an hour and 20 minutes, and it speaks to our world today. Next week, we're going to study the most tragic moment in the entire Torah, perhaps the death of Nadav and Abihu. And I found a sod I think works. We've never used it before. It'll speak to you and it'll speak to us. I hope. It should be a beautiful day, maybe a little rainy. Go give thanks. Be grateful. By the way, if you have people in your family and you're around and you haven't given thanks to them, it's a good time to do that, right? Don't miss the opportunity. I will tell you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Great to see everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you. This was
Shabbat shalom.
fantastic.
Take care, Mike.
Shabbat shalom all.
Shalom,
Take care,
Victor.
Sharf.